everyone, and welcome to this Legacy Leavers video with me, James Preston. And today I just wanted to do a little comment on an interview that was on Cliff Central this morning. I listened to it while I was at gym. I don't often listen to Cliff Central for a number of reasons, not because of taste or anything, just because I don't really have a chance to. But today I saw that Steve Hofmeyr was going to be interviewed by Gareth Cliff, and I love talk radio. I really enjoyed Gareth Cliff when he was on 5FM, and I thought, man, this is one that I've got to tune into, because obviously Steve Hofmeyr is causing a couple of ripples and waves throughout South African politics at the moment with some of his ideologies and some of his comments. Of course, the big Twitter comment that said that blacks were the architects of apartheid. So he's been in the limelight a lot lately, and so I just wanted to listen to this interview, and coming out of that interview I was intrigued, and I just wanted to make a little bit of a comment on that interview, and just a couple of things that were said specifically by Steve Hofmeyr. Firstly, I want to say this, and if Steve Hofmeyr or any of his fans ever watch this, then that's great. And the first thing I want to say is well done to Steve Hofmeyr for coming onto a show like Gareth Cliff's, knowing that Gareth Cliff is not the kind of interviewer who would hold any punches. He's going to go for the kill, which he did. But a lot of respect to you, Steve Hofmeyr, for coming onto a show and holding your own. You were very strong in your opinions. You didn't waver. You didn't get angry either. You didn't. I mean, Gareth Cliff certainly tried to push you on some points, and you didn't get angry. You didn't get emotional. So that was really good to see. And I think that's the problem with Twitter. Twitter is text primarily until data and bandwidth gets easier and there's more video on there. No comment to South African watchers right now on that point. But Twitter is primarily text, so we write something in passion and it can be misconstrued and taken the wrong way. As Gareth Cliff said himself, he made a comment on Twitter about Senzo Meyiwa's funeral and said, who's paying for it? And he apologized for it on air, so kudos to him for that. But a lot of people misinterpreted that. And so I think what I'm trying to say is, we can see a tweet, and we can get an idea, and then we cast a judgment on that person because of the way they tweet or what they said or even how they said it. I know some of the things that I've said, especially about sport, have been pretty harsh, and I know that I'm not a harsh person. I'm not an abrasive person. I'm a passionate person. There's a difference between abrasiveness and passion. But my tweets, because of my passion, can certainly come across as harsh. And so in this interview, I saw Steve Hofmeyr in a different light. I saw him in a different perspective, and I really gained a lot of respect for Steve Hofmeyr, because he has his opinions. I may not agree with a lot of them, but he seems like a calm man. He's a very respectful man, and I appreciated that about him. And I just don't agree with all of his stuff, and that's just what I wanted to talk about. So just pulling a couple of points out of the interview with Steve Hofmeyr. I had to make these comments. I'm a young South African, born in England. For those that don't know me, born in England, moved out to South Africa in 1991. Crazy times, and what I see going on in South Africa and how crazy all the politics are at the moment. We really need people like Steve Hofmeyr to be a little bit more careful in what they say, So I just wanted to make some comments here on three primary things. The first thing is, he said this. He said he voted yes in the yes-no vote in 92, I think it was, when the minority, the people who had voting rights, voted for a free and fair democratic election, yes or no. And he says he voted yes, right? But he now says, 23 years later, that if he had to go back now, knowing what he knows now, he would vote no. That is a very, very implicating statement. So he says that he would vote no now. Knowing what he knows now, going back, he would vote no, right? What exactly does he mean by that? Steve, do you realize what you're implying when you say that? You're implying that you would you would be happy for the minority to run the country, and a majority of people, the black people, the majority of people would not have any voting rights. They would not have any say in our democracy, and yet they are the primary citizens of the nation, of the country. You're actually saying so. Basically, the world. Human rights around the world embrace democracy, and that every culture and tribe and class of people must be able to have their say, right? And it's something like 95% of the countries in the world, not the populations, but 95% of the countries in the world have what's known as universal suffrage, which is the right to vote. And you're basically saying you would take away that right from the majority of the nation. I mean, you've got to think that through, Steve. The implications of what you're saying are huge. The sanctions that would be imposed on the South African economy would be immense, because it would be a direct contravention of human rights. You may not agree with how the majority are running the country, but to make a statement like you would basically take away, that's what you're saying. You're saying you would have voted no for the majority to be able to participate in the elections. That you're saying no, I actually wish they didn't have the right to vote, right? I understand, you've got to go deeper. You've got to go deeper than just, that's such a surface statement. You've got to go deeper than that. You've got to realize that it's not about what they're going to vote or what their background is or why they're voting for the ANC or whatever. It's not about that. It's about human rights, and they are human beings, and they deserve, by nature of being human beings, they deserve a right to be able to vote. So that really is a dangerous statement, Steve. You shouldn't be making statements like that. Then, what else did you say? You said that blacks, essentially, and you did say this again in the interview, you said blacks essentially were the architects of apartheid, because, and then you qualified this statement, this was the tweet that went crazy, you qualified the statement by saying because their resistance of colonial rule or colonial visitors, if you like, because at the time they weren't ruling, because of the blacks' resistance of the colonialists and the trade fairs and what have you, because the blacks resisted these colonialists, they enforced the divisions. So by that, they became the architects of apartheid. Now, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, tweet me, whatever, mail me, make a video response to me, but just, is this really what you're implying? Because if it is, it's insane. There's no other way for me to say it, it's insane. Just because they resisted the colonialists doesn't mean that they enforced apartheid. The architects of apartheid were the National Party who enforced separation, division, took away basic human rights. They put it into law. So the people that were divided, that were discriminated against, could be brought in front of a court and legally declared criminals simply for sitting on the wrong side of the bus or going to the wrong beach or whatever the case is, just for doing basic stuff. So that was enforced, that was made law by the National Party, and you're saying that it stems back to the 1600s and the 1700s when Jan van Riebeeck, Vasco da Gama and those kind of people first arrived on South African soil? And the blacks resisted that? I mean, come on, they've been there for years. They've never seen these people. They've probably seen the ships cruise past, and now all of a sudden they're starting to arrive on their shores. I mean, these tribes would have naturally been apprehensive about the arrival of these colonialists and these discoverers. It only makes sense. So to say that is the reason, it all stemmed from that, it's ludicrous. There's no other way for me to say it, but it's ludicrous, and the statement is ludicrous. I'm not saying you're ludicrous. Remember what I said earlier. I really appreciate you and I respect you, Mr. Hofmeyr, Steve, but that kind of statement is ludicrous, and that's why what I'm saying is I just want you to think about what you're saying. That's all I'm asking. Think about your ideology, and just go back a little bit and just apply some logic to what the implications of your statements are. So you would have voted no. You're saying that blacks were the architects of apartheid, right? Because they resisted the colonialists, okay? And that's what I picked up in the interview. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. And then the final thing I just wanted to pick up on was this. You said that blacks have a history of not integrating. You said that, I think it was quite early on in the interview, you said blacks have a history of not integrating. If you look at the history of it and the sociology of where the various suburbs are and whatever, I guess that's what you're implying, but you did say that statement, that blacks have a history of not integrating. Look, I'm not a sociologist, I'm not an anthropologist, and I don't know the history of blacks' integration. What I do see is this. I'm a white guy living in a middle-class suburb, and I'm very thankful for that. Yes, I have privilege. I'm a previously privileged person. I don't deny that, and yeah. So I won't harp on that. But what I do see is a lot of people of colour moving into these suburbs, and I don't have a problem with that. And I will say this, and I'll be honest with you, I'm just being honest here, South Africa. As people of colour move into these suburbs, what I am seeing is a lot of white people getting uncomfortable, they don't like the culture, and so they move out. And yes, there may be different cultural practices, loud parties, slaughtering of animals in gardens, things like that. They cite those kind of reasons, but that doesn't happen a lot. I mean, we're talking, I would say 1% from what I've seen, okay? 1% of the people of colour that move into predominantly white suburbs may push the civil norms, if you like, or the cultural norms of the suburb. You know, I'm trying not to dig myself into a hole here. But what I'm seeing is a lot of people of colour have no problem moving into these suburbs, but when it comes to the whites are the ones who feel uncomfortable. It's the whites who don't want to integrate. It's the whites who won't embrace new cultures. It's the whites who won't embrace people living alongside them. Not all of them, okay? That's not all the whites, but a lot of whites, okay? And we certainly don't see whites moving into predominantly black or Indian suburbs or coloured suburbs, for instance. So we've got to be careful. You can't make a statement like that and then actually look at the demographics of suburbs and of our cities and of our residential areas. You've got to be careful of a statement like that. The other thing is, I just wanted to use this example, the Springboks, right? I'm a huge rugby fan, okay? So the Springboks are probably our national treasure before Bafana because of how well they do in rugby, right? Now, the Springboks are supported by the whole nation. The whole nation, white, black, Indian, coloured, you name it, they all support the Springboks because it represents them, it represents South Africa. Now, if you go to a Springbok game, there are predominantly white people. Now, I'm seeing a lot more black people coming to the Springbok games, a lot more Indian people, which is great. I love that. But I can tell you that a lot of white supporters aren't exactly embracing of these new cultures and races coming into their territory. But I've gone to a lot of Bafana games, right? And Bafana games are awesome. I've been to most of them I've been to Stadium in Durban, and predominantly a black crowd, right? The whites are probably, I don't know, not even 10%, 5% probably of the crowd. Yeah, about 5% sounds about right. And to walk, you park your car, you walk all the way down to the stadium, find a spot and walk all the way down to the stadium, you're passing taxis. And I'll be honest, as a white person, it can be intimidating. I personally am not intimidated, but I can understand, a lot of whites would be intimidated by that, by walking that crowd. But you know what, as you walk down, these amazing Bafana supporters, black Bafana supporters, are behind you. They're saying, hey, Bafana, Bafana, they're shouting with you, they are cheering you on, they're embracing you, they're bringing you into the environment, they're bringing you into the hype and the atmosphere of the game, which is something you don't see at a Springbok game, at a rugby game. You don't see the whites embracing a new culture coming into their territory. But I tell you what, I feel that at a Bafana Bafana game. I feel that the black culture embraces new cultures coming into their territory, and that's one area, just one area where I have seen blacks actually don't have a problem with integrating. Now, this isn't meant to be a big sociological survey. It's just a comment on the interview between Steve Hofmeyr and Gareth Cliff. So that's about it. Those are the 3 primary points. Like I say, I really respect you, Steve Hofmeyr, for being calm on the show. But I can't say I agree with all of your points, and just want to say these 3 things. You know, saying that you would have voted no, saying that blacks were the architects of apartheid. Please rethink these things, and that blacks don't integrate as well as whites. Again, you've got to be careful. You are marginalizing yourself from their opinion. You know, their opinion of you is going to become very biased towards you and against you because of the things that you're saying. And yes, you may grow in support in some of the minority cultures and the minority vote base, but is it really worth it when you're marginalizing yourself from the majority? I'm just asking you to think it through. That's all I'm saying. I just want to say a big thank you to Gareth Cliff for your incredible interview, for the way you interviewed Steve Hofmeyr. It was a fantastic interview. Well done to Cliff Central for the great way in which you guys did it. It was brilliant stuff, it really was. So thank you, well done to Gareth Cliff, Steve Hofmeyr, and well done South Africa. You're an awesome country, we are an awesome country, and all I want is for us all to work together, to fight together, to unite, and move South Africa forward without casting judgment on one another, without dividing people in our minds and in our hearts, and just saying, hey, you're a South African, I'm a South African. You know what I loved? One of the things I loved was Gareth Cliff made a comment. He said, what happens if aliens landed on planet Earth? Would you unite with the black people's opinion? Would you unite with them in opposing these alien colonialists, you know, or would you remain divided between white and black? And I thought that was just a great little point, because the reality is we're all human. We're all human beings. We are one people. It doesn't matter whether you're white, black, Indian, colored. What matters is that you're a human being. And South Africans, the more South Africans learn that, the better. Let's move South Africa forward. Come on, let's leave our legacy in this amazing nation. This is James Preston on Legacy Leavers, encouraging you to keep changing the world.